Humbug. So there's this book that's been on my TBR for years called The Man Who Invented Christmas. It's about how Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol changed the way we celebrate the holiday. I've especially been aware of it in recent years because I've actually met the author, Les Stanford, through this local annual writing conference. But it's right up my alley for things I'm interested in. History, fiction, writing, cultural shifts, Christmas, just all of that. Yes. So hearing that it had been adapted into a film was apparently the push I really needed to finally read it, because I did! Yay me! I finished it last week, and then I got to see the movie a few days ago. Most everyone, at least in America and the UK, are very familiar with the story of A Christmas Carol, whose full name is A Christmas Carol in Prose, being a ghost story of Christmas. Wow your friends with pedantic literary facts. Subscribe to The Princess and the Scrivener! I really enjoyed this book. And it's a fascinating story. There was a lot of talk about Dickens's other writing and how he'd been kicking around the idea of a Christmas story for a really long time, and how addressing things like charity and poverty were really big themes in most of his work. Stanford also took the time to talk about the history of Christmas and how its origins as a pagan holiday, most often associated with being low class, gave Dickens the opportunity to inject some new lore and vigor into it. Has anyone noticed the Mickey on my tree? Something that I also really liked about it was that it identified A Christmas Carol as a secular work. Dickens was not very religious and was actually pretty suspicious of the kind of charity organized religion carried out at the time, and it was particularly interesting to hear about the secular nature of this story because I think in America we interpret this story as being kinda religious because of the references to God, but like, that's not what Dickens intended. The ghosts of Christmas are not holy ghosts. Tiny Tim makes references to God in order to make his poor family sympathetic to the middle and upper class readers of Dickens's time. But it's not religious, because at the time, Christmas wasn't really a super religious holiday. This book really changed the way I think about this story, because it helped break down the influence that my own culture, being Christian and American, has had on the way we tell this story. So it was a great book, and I would really recommend it. It's also a quick read and or listen. And the movie. The movie was pretty fun. I certainly felt like my enjoyment was enhanced by having read the book, but it's not at all necessary to read it beforehand. And I know we just spent like 7 whole videos kind of ragging on a movie that Dan Stevens starred in, but I don't actually dislike him. I know he's a talented actor. I've seen him in Legion. He was fantastic as Dickens. If I learned anything from this book, and I learned a lot, I learned that Dickens was a weird, melodramatic guy, and I thought Stevens had this energy that embodied that really well. I thought the movie did a good job of adapting this historical work into a narrative fitting for a movie. It was also a delightful, though subdued, rendition of the story, A Christmas Carol. We get so much of the gorgeous prose that Dickens wrote for the story in this movie, and we so rarely get that in film adaptations of A Christmas Carol. Side note, that's something I love about the Muppet Christmas Carol. It's one of, if not the only, adaptation to use Dickens's narration in the story.
The Marleys were dead to begin with.
But yeah, it was a fun movie. It was well balanced, the pacing was good, Dan Stevens and Christopher Plummer were great together, just so tremendously entertaining. This movie was not without its missteps. There were some scenes that probably went on a little bit longer than they should have. There was some inner conflict I didn't feel was explored enough. But these little things did not come anywhere close to ruining the movie for me. I had a great time. Something that was also really nice about seeing this movie at this particular time is that it's about a guy writing on a deadline and having this pressure to complete a creative project. And for me, writing and working on Vlogmas / Hanuvlog this month, it was really nice to see a fellow artist and writer and creator struggling. Just so very gratifying. Especially because we see Dickens struggle with wanting to write but also having to stop and deal with the actual demands of his own life as well as his own personal problems, which was very relatable. Just such a fun, uplifting holiday story. I think both the book and the movie are worth consuming. The book is just absolutely fascinating, and it'll probably give you a deeper appreciation of Dickens and A Christmas Carol. I know it did for me. The movie was a very entertaining story about a man wrestling with a creative project who ultimately prevails and learns more about himself along the way. There is definitely something to be gained from enjoying either of these tales, and I highly recommend that you check both of them out. Thank you all for watching. Like this video if you like A Christmas Carol, let me know in the comments below your favorite adaptation of it, and subscribe to The Princess and the Scrivener for more videos on Disney, intersectional feminism, pop culture critiques, and more! The Princess will see you tomorrow.